Hello, welcome to a demo for Join Workflows. Right, today what we are going to say is how to use workflows when it is assigned to a document book or any kind of a book in Join. Right, so what we are going to do is first we'll create a document book and assign a profile to the book. We'll then create a workflow and assign the workflow to the document book created. Then we'll test the workflow, right, using pending items, and then I'll just show you how to quickly add the action types so that the workflow can be more user friendly to work upon by its user. Okay, so to log in to test all these features, right, we'll first log in to an administrator portal. Right, you can see it from the URL. It's mentioned admin as a folder, which is an easy identification of a joint portal. Right? So first let's quickly log into the administrator portal. It will take me to the welcome screen or the landing page for the administrator. From here you can do a lot of things, like you can manage your users, adding new users and managing their access controls, create different books, profiles, workflows, overviews, and a lot of other things that you can do. Right, so now since we would like to create a document book, okay, so first I'll go to application management. In application management I'll go to books and I'll say document books, and you can see here it says new document book. So I'll just type in sample, let's say sample workflow book. Right, so the book is created. I'll open the book. Here it says file directory. I'll just say samples. So this is nothing but if you are attaching a document to this book, then all the files on the server will be saved in this folder. By default, you can see there is something which is called as default document profile. So we have a set of default profiles which are already created in Join. So for now we'll just keep it to a default document. For now we'll just assign it to a I'll just assign this to a default document profile, and then I'll update it later. Okay. There is some setting called as show book on root level. Right, so what happens is instead of showing this book in a tree structure, I'll say just show it above the tree structure, so it comes out of the tree structure and is available for use. Right, so I'll keep this profile as it is. Right, you can see there are other tabs which is for user rights. By default, there's a configuration setting which says that the default rights for all the users. So these settings can be predefined. Once the book is created, right, let's just check the profile that is already assigned. So assume that this is one of the profile that I have created. So I'll click on the link, and this is the profile that is created. Right, you can see that there are fields already selected since this being a default profile. Okay, what I'll do is there is a button at the top. It says show only active fields. I'll click on it. Right, so this will give me all the other fields which you can choose from and are not selected. Right, so let's just say I'll check these two. It says bold2, that means it's boolean field, so I'll just say checkbox, for example. Right, then these two checkboxes are nothing but it says show in the form and show in the list. So when you log in, right, at the top to the client portal, you see the list of records in a particular book, and at the bottom you'll see the details. So whether you want this field, like this checkbox field, to be displayed in the form as well as in the list, then you need to check this both the checkbox. Okay, I'll just change the sequence so that we can see the effect and see this field at the top. So I'll just say today's date, and I'll check this. So and I'll change the sequence so that even this field is up at the top. I'll save this. Now you can see the book is this profile is already linked to these many books because it's the default profile, and that's quite possible. Our book is sample workflow, sample WF book, so the profile is already linked. Right, I'll save this. I'll click on the button again, which will show me only the active fields, and I can see the fields that I have added are already there. Right, now what I need to do is since we are going to create a workflow, and my workflow goes through certain steps or certain status, or there is a certain status that a workflow should go through. So, okay, so for that what I have done is I have already created a status field in the profile, and I have assigned a table. You can see it says demo status table. I have created a table, right, for all the statuses that a workflow can go through, and I have assigned that status table to one of the field, right? And this field is a read-only field, so that no user can change it manually. This is really important when it comes to using status. You need to assign this table to one of the field in the profile. Okay, and as you can see here under application management, you can create tables. Okay, so when you assign a table to a field, what it does is it just creates a drop down in that field with the values which are listed in the table. Okay, now book is ready, profile is ready, we have assigned that status table as well. Now let's just go to the welcome screen again and first create a workflow for a document workflow. Okay, I'll just say new. You can see you can actually create a copy of an existing workflow and change it further. But for now, what I'll do is I'll create a new workflow. Right, so this window opens up. It is as simple as, you know, dragging and dropping, like drawing a flow chart. Right, so the first node in the workflow is nothing but a start node, and it says insert names. Okay, so I can just give a name to the workflow. I'll just say sample workflow document. Okay, then you have something called as a status table, right? And this is nothing but the same table that you need to assign, which you have assigned to a profile, right? So this will give us an idea that, I mean, when the user work on these activities related to this workflow, they'll get an idea that what is the current status of the workflow and what are the next status, or what is the next step that is about to be. Okay, and I can just give in that this activity should be completed in one day. Once this activity, the start node, is complete, what should be the status? So I'll just say S1 should be the status as soon as this first activity is completed, right? The next activity, I want some kind of a user action. So that means a user should perform something. So what I'll do is I'll just drag and drop this user icon, right? I'll link this to this, right? So that the first wording goes for this node. Now I'll select this node, and on the right hand side you'll see the properties for on this node. The first is the handling type. Now handling type is nothing but this activity that I have just created, whether this has to be handled by a particular user, right? Or else there is a provision of having user roles. So suppose if you want a group of people to handle a particular activity, what you can do is you can select a user role, and under the role you can just assign it. For example, here you can see accounts can be a team admin, there can be an admin team, there can be, you know, a management team, right, who needs to perform a particular action. So you can create all these kind of user roles, which you can do under process management and user roles, right? So user roles is nothing but a group of people that you can create and use it in workflows. For this, for our example, I'll just keep it user as a handler. I'll assign a particular user, right? And I'll say status after this should be S2. That means once this activity is complete, the status should be S2. Then you need to assign an action type. Now action type is nothing but an, you know, kind of a small hint or a small piece of information for a user that what exactly he needs to do. So suppose for this I'll just put in the action type as handler this document activity, right? So instead of 3 days, I'll just give the user 2 days to complete this activity. So once this is done, I want to move forward in the workflow. Now instead of dragging and dropping and then, you know, connecting this link manually, what you can do is click on this node, and there is, it says create and connect new links to this particular node, right? So I'll say okay, and I'll say I want to perform a checklist, right? Or I want to add a checklist that, right? So these checks are nothing but a set of guidelines or set of checks that you need to perform before the workflow moves forward, right? So checklist can be created again under process management. On the left side it says checklists, right? So here I'll say this check, again checklist can also be handled by a particular role, like a group of people or a particular user, right? So I'll just say handler, and I'll say this person is supposed to handle this checklist, right? Next step is to assign the actual checklist. So I have created this sample checklist. I'll keep that here, right? Status after processing this checklist is S3, right? So status changes once the checks are done. Now for checklist, either I can select something from the action type, or else I can simply type in manually. So I'll just say complete the checklist, right? So this is just an action that a user gets an idea that what exactly he needs to do, right? Time for processing will be 1 day. Once this is complete, then I want to add a computer action, right? Now you can see there are 3 nodes automatically added. Why? Because this is a checklist. Now every checklist has an output, right? Whether the checklist will be accepted when we say that all checks are met, or there will be a step where checks are not met. So I'll just delete this. For example, we'll just keep it simple, saying that all the checks will be met, right? Then after processing, I'll just say this should be finished, right? I'll just say updating data, right? I'll just say that this computer action will update some data. Now what exactly what type of data will be updated? For that, I'll click on this properties for this computer action node, right? And you can see there are a lot of things that you can do with the computer action. You can give a website, a call to a website. You can give a web service call. That means if you want to pass down some data to any other system, you can pass it down using a web service. Now there are some standard computer action, right? Now you can actually create a merge file like using templates, or you can create an HTML email, or you can actually start another workflow, right? From within the workflow, right? For now, we'll just say I'll just change a single field value. Now values will be changed where, right? So you can select a profile. Now this profile is nothing but the profile that you have assigned to a book. So if you want to change a particular value in a particular profile, you select that. Once you select the profile, all the fields for that value will also be listed here, right? So for now, let's say I'll check any field that I have entered. So I'll just say today's date is the field, and I'll just put in the date. That today's date by default is already there, right? So as soon as this activity is completed, it should update this today's date field with whatever date will be of that day, right? I'll say okay. Once this is done, I would like to end the workflow. So what I'll do is I'll say again new, and I'll just select this endpoint. Okay, so this is just a sample workflow. I'll save this workflow, right? Now once the workflow is saved, now I need to link this workflow to a book. So for that, what I'll do is I'll just go to document books, right? I'll select the book again. I'll go to workflow, right? So this is the book that we have created. I'll go to workflow. It says default workflow. Now I'll choose is always use a selected workflow, and I'll just select the workflow which we just created, that is sample workflow doc, and I'll save this. Now what will happen is every time a new entry is made in this book, right, a workflow will automatically start. Now since we have configured the profile, we have made the changes, we have created the workflow, linked the workflow, now let's just quickly see how exactly it works. So what I'll do is, since for performance issue everything is cached, so under database management, right, I'll click on clear cache and I'll clear the database cache, so that whatever changes that we have made, right, those are available in the client portal. I'll also recycle the application pool. Once this is done, I'll just go to client portal again, refresh it once, and quickly log in with one of the user. Just log in, it takes the dashboard, and I'll jump to the items. Right now you can see this is the book we have just created, sample workflow book. Right, I'll click on that and I'll create a new entry or a new item. It does that. Right? And you can see these are the fields which we added. Right? So I'll just check this the date. I'll just put in some sample information. I'll skip rest of the field because this is the default profile, and by default these fields are already there. Once this is there, once you fill in all the information, I'll click on save. While this is saved, a small tile come on the right hand side. It says hide handlers, and this is nothing but a workflow activity that is started. If you remember, this was our first activity, right? And this is the username, and this is something which he or she has to do. Now how to handle this activity, right? So this user can use pending tasks. We call it a dynamic workbench, where all the activities that are assigned to you will be listed. the activity that is assigned to you, the number of days that activity should be completed will be displayed here. If it, if this due date is passed, right, you'll find a red colored bubble appear here with the number of days. Okay, let's open this. Right, you can see that as soon as the activity starts, S1 is already there. Next status or the next step in the workflow was supposed to be S2, so it is already there, right? So we are on S2. I'll just put in some notes. Document uploaded. I'll just click on handle. So when I say handle, it is nothing but that I am saying that this particular activity in the workflow is complete. It says you are authorized to handle the next action. It is being shown. Since I am the same user, or the user that I am logged in with is the same user, right, which is supposed to handle this activity in the workflow, is this activity is shown to him right away. Now if you see, S1 is complete, S2 we completed just now, and there is another activity which is S3, right? So this activity was related to a checklist, so I'll just say that all the checks are done. I'll put in some comments, checklist verified, and I'll say handle the activity. Now if you remember, after the checklist we had in computer action, right? The computer action is something which does not require any human intervention, so this activity is gone. Now let's just go to the book again and see what has happened to the item, right? If you can see, the workflow is completed, right? See, handle this document activity, complete the checklist, and updating data. This was the computer action that we completed, right? And if I just scroll down, I can see which user has handled this activity. Now there is an interactive visual view of all this workflow that has processed. So if you see on the top, it says show extended workflow information. I'll click on that, and this gives me an kind of a visual view of the workflow, that these are the activities here. So this is the first activity, started at this point, completed at this point. Another activity started at this point, completed at this point. So it gives you a complete idea. If particular activity is completed after the due date has been passed, it will be something which will come up in red. You can see the legends, it says active, past, due, done, right? So I'll close this view. Now coming to these action types, right, which are nothing but kind of a short information for a user. How do you get all these action types for workflows? So for that, what you need to do is, in your client portal, you need to go to more. There is something called as administration. Click on that, and on the left hand side you'll find something under systems which says action types, right? And these are, depending upon the type of workflow that you want to create, you can create your own action type. So for now I'll just say document action, right? And I'll say new. I'll just put in activity for test, right? And I can by default give some default due term to this particular activity. I can calculate these work days, and the number of days in work days. I can ask for an authentication again, and I'll save this. Once this is saved, and if you go back to the workflows again, I'll open the same workflow which we just created, sample workflow, and if I choose any of these activities, and if I go to action terms, right, I should be able to find that activity. You can see sample activity is already there. Just check the name what we created. We said created activity for test, right? You can see the very first one says activity for test, right? And it is assigned there. This creates, we suggest to create well informative short description about the activity that you are supposed to perform, right? So this helps a user, right, while he is performing his activity. It helps the user to understand that what exactly he or she needs to do, right? So under workflow, if I go, you can see all these activities. So I hope you got a better idea. For more questions, please reach out to us, and I'll just log out again. Right on your welcome screen, you can see it. I'll log out again. So I hope you got a better idea for workflows. This was a short description. There are a few more activities that can be performed, but for demo we try to keep it as simple as possible. Thank you.